So I interviewed a high school friend of mine. We graduated in 1978. Laura Cruz McCormick went on to get her education degree in 1983. She's been in the lower elementary school grades, middle school English, and she said when she went into high school English and they found out she was bilingual, she's been a Spanish teacher for the bulk of those years. She teaches in Grandview. So we had a very interesting conversation on the topic of education in general, down to even transitioning from one subject to another as an educator. I entered the educational field in 2017. I was a retail manager at a big box store for 24 years, but I had always wanted to be a teacher. So in 2017, my husband was on board and I quit my job and worked part-time and finished getting my bachelor's, and then went into the teammate program and became a substitute teacher. And within 4 months of joining the teammate program, I was hired down in Joshua School District to teach history to 7th graders. I am very, very new at all of this, and I greatly appreciated everything that Laura had to tell me. She gave me some great advice, and we'll get into that in just a moment. So when we visited about her teaching Spanish, and she said, hey, 99% of my students don't understand Spanish at all. So I have to start there. I have to start very, very basic at the very beginning. There usually is no schema for them to go by. So she said, I used my TEAC, my curriculum, my scope and sequence, and she said, I just try to keep my experiences real. She said Spanish, any foreign language automatically is great for collaborative learning and cooperative learning, and the students all have work really well when they can bounce what they're learning off of each other. And she said, so that's always been the policy that I've had. Let them work together. We all figure it out together, and they do really well. So Laura says the evidence that is most informative to her, she said, if you mean the most telling way for me to know if they're learning is performance-based assessments, hands down. She said it's the most accurate measuring tool. It's honest, transparent, and she said most importantly, it disallows cheating, piggybacking on others, and faking the knowledge. So I think we have to look just a moment at exactly what performance-based assessments are, and ASCD had a very, very good article, and they actually had this image, and it has to be a balance. Do you know it, and can you use it? And they say, what is performance-based learning and assessment? And on their website, they say, in the act of learning, people obtain content knowledge, acquire skills, and develop work habits, and practice the application of all three real-world situations. Performance-based learning and assessment represents a set of strategies for the acquisition, application of knowledge, skills, and work habits through the performance of tasks that are meaningful and engaging to students. I think what we can take away from this quote, what is performance-based learning and assessment and why is it important? I think the ASCD has really made it very, very simply. We want a balance. We want to build on what they know and make it relevant to them. And it's kind of like scaffolding. You know, you start with something basic and it's a building block, and you build upon it and you build upon it. And as they learn, they're able to utilize it more. They're able to process better. They have better work habits. All of these things are strategies that pool their knowledge together so that you can assess and see what it is. Do they know it? Can they use it? And I'd like to add in on that. Do they understand it, and is it relevant? I think that, especially for me coming out of history, can be so irrelevant a lot of times. And I feel like everything we do, no matter what content, it needs to be relevant to those students. So one thing that she and I both kind of laughed about, because we graduated in 1978 from high school, is that school was not fun, it was not engaging, and there was no variety. And we both talked about how important it is that school needs to be fun. Kids are inundated with fun. They're inundated with graphics. They're inundated with instantaneous gratification, all of these things. So your classroom needs to be fun, and I'm not to be confused with frivolous, because that is something that we don't want in classroom. We want that rigor to be there, but we want it to be presented in a way that is engaging for them, and it can be fun. And it's be fun because there is variety. We're not asking them to come in and sit down and do the same thing every day. We're not asking them to come in and sit down and do only what we want them to do and to listen to these old-fashioned sage on the stage. We want them to be involved. And she said that those three things worked for her. And in the short time that I have taught, I also have noticed I wouldn't know any other way, because that's how Teammate has taught us. You know, they are training 21st century teachers, and I'm very proud of that. You know, I was very proud that my students when I took over mid-year, blossomed, you know, and I'd like to say that it was me, but I don't. Were components of me there, but I think it's because of my teaching model. I think had a lot to do with it. I would almost, 75% was how I presented my material, and it also helped me. You know, that's one thing we haven't really addressed, is how it affects the teacher. If a teacher's not all stressed out and crabby acting, they enjoy teaching as well. So I think it keeps the stress level down in regard to student and teacher. And I think that there is nothing wrong with having a classroom that is fun. And that is my goal, and that has been her goal, and she says it works for her very well. So her biggest challenge, wow, it was actually quite frightening. It was frightening for me to hear it. She had an angry student, she said, that was cranked on meth, came into her full classroom with the intent to harm her personally. She said one of the biggest things in her favor was that his mental strength was greatly compromised. She said, she says, what I mean is he was completely wasted. And she said she was able to get all but one of her students out of the room without injury. I mean, you know, when we think about that, we don't realize what can come walking into our classroom, and we need to be prepared. And she said, I have no doubt, she said, had he been able to bring a gun to school that day, she said, you'd probably be interviewing someone else. She said that moment really impacted her, as you can imagine that it would. And it also kind of changed her thought process on not only does she need to teach her students, but she needs to be ready at a moment's notice to protect students and even protect the ones that are instigators from themselves. And so she didn't go into a great deal of detail. She didn't care to do that. But she said, I'll tell you what I did. She said, I bluffed him, kept my cool, and I kept the safety of my students as my number one priority. And she said she was able to get all of the students out of the room, and she said she learned a very valuable lesson that day, and you need to always have that just laid out in your mind, how you will handle situations that are not necessarily posted by your light switch when you walk into your room, but something that just comes in very sporadically that can interrupt the day. So when we talked about some of the learning strategies that she uses, she said, first off, it has to be something that they can relate to. She mentioned this a couple of times during the course of our interview. She says it's got to be something that is of interest to them, and how they learn is going to vary from student to student. And we talked about, audio, visual, interactive, kinesthetic, all of those things. And she said it doesn't take very long for you to pick that up in a classroom. Exactly how the different students learn and how they think. And she said, but you kind of get the hang of that. You kind of have those categories in your head, and you're like, okay, well, you are this type of learner, so now I know what I need to be looking for in a strategy for you. And she said you'll find ones that work and ones that don't particularly work. She said as far as just labeling them, she said it has kind of changed for her even throughout the years. And she said the main thing is create the student opportunities to display their knowledge in a variety of interactive ways, and allow them to have an input in the creation of those very means. So let them utilize how they learn best, and let them have a choice in how they want to put that learning together. Because as she said, it all comes down to performance-based testing, and you're not doing them any service at all if you're asking them to learn in a way that they're not comfortable with. And she said, students as stakeholders. She said, remember, they are stakeholders. So let them be in charge of their learning. And when that performance-based testing comes around, you'll know. And she said, there's no shame in having to tweak your model somewhat, because she says you're not going to know everything right up front. And she said, and that's fine. She said, you're a stakeholder as well, so everybody is learning. And it made me feel really good, because I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves as teachers, that we immediately walk in and we should be able to just be experts in the field. Many of us, especially coming in with alternative certifications, know just enough to be dangerous. As my mother used to say to me, different situations when I was growing up, just enough to be dangerous. So we want to be able to know just enough, that we're going to be learning as well. And we want to never put a child in a situation where we are forcing them into a shoe that does not fit for them. The one thing Laura said was she wanted her students to know it all. She said that was her biggest instructional mistake, was she couldn't figure out why they weren't learning all the information. And then she realized she said it made standard paper tests an impossible means of measuring their knowledge. And frankly, there was no need to know it all. So she said, you you need to go through, and there are readiness standards. There are things that they need to know, but then there are things that are nice to know. And she said, you need to make sure that you don't put that kind of pressure on you and on them, and just stop and analyze. What is it that I want you to know? What is it that you need to take away from this? What is it that is relevant to you? Something that will help you understand what it is I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to help you learn. Because then, if you go about it that way, when they get into those standardized test situations, they're going to have the understanding and how to perform optimally for that. They're going to know that mastery. And she said that now their method of demonstrating is learning as the individual that they are. So I thought that was a really good quote from her, actually. She said, and again, she repeated that she teaches them based on how they learn, whether they're audio, visual, interactive, kinesthetic learners, they relate. We don't all relate the same. We don't all interact the same. And she said, then she said, it's their turn to teach me. She said, because I also don't know everything. And that again is fine. She said, and I actually enjoy it when they come up with something that I had no clue about. She said, it shows that I'm human. And she said, it shows that you're never too old to learn, and it shows some humility. And she says, honestly, sometimes students kind of need that. She said, again, she brought in the performance-based testing. Sometimes she said she'll ask them to create an original assessment piece, demonstrating their acquisition of the material. She says there are many, many ways to show mastery of material, and formative assessment is a great way to do that. And she said, your original assessments then at the end, where they're actually demonstrating what they understand, she said is always really, really, you can place a lot of value on that. So at the beginning of the book, on pages 7 to 8, they kind of summarized everything and set the tone, went into how everyone's brain is unique and that we all think differently. So we all are going to learn differently. It's not a one-size-fits-all process. And how we need to make sure that the students' needs must be met and how we go about doing that. We do take into account how they learn. We are respectful. We recognize their successes and still reassure them when they have failures, and we give them a safe learning environment. We're going to listen to them, and we're going to be there for them, and we're going to combine all of those things together so that they can have an optimal learning experience. One thing that we touched on quite a bit that helped me out tremendously was the unpacking of the TEAC. I know that probably seems very basic, but I gained significant understanding when I learned how to unpack TEAC. And then that just segued into the guided question and your content objective and the length that one is versus the length that the other one is. And it helps you put a lesson together in a way where it's not all over the place. It's very concise. I feel like students, they need that precision. They need to have something streamlined and focused in order for them to be creative. If they have to spend their time trying to figure out what the heck is going on, their creativity just goes right out the window because there's no path. There's no path for them to follow. So that leads into the communication is very, very important. Delivery is very important. the collaboration between the students and the collaboration when the teacher comes around to the different groups. You know, you're collaborating as well. It's very important that you are modeling in a way that students are gaining understanding and are not just kind of stifled by just what they're able to only sort out. You always want to be asking them those higher order questions, those thinking questions, so that they dig deeper. We want them to dig deeper. And that actually made me just think about how you were talking about how we need to dig deeper, not broader. So those are all very, very relevant things. And reflection is just an important part of the process so that we look back and see where we've been and where we are at now.